Hiya, welcome to another presentation from the Java's Web Users Group in London. This was episode of Birds of a Feather number 23, which took place on the 15th of November 2006 at Skills Matters offices in London. This presentation was the first time we tried an open space technology format, which we tried and successfully delivered. We attempted, and I believe we answered, two central questions on that evening. The first question was, okay, what is the future of Java web development? The second question was, how are we going to architect the new enterprise, or rather, in brackets, how are we going to re-architect the old enterprise? You'll find out by watching this video. Enjoy this one, especially from me. Thank you. For this BOF, we're going to change things a little bit. Instead of just being our eyes forward, we are going to have a discussion, and it's all going to be the first time we've all done this. And there are two topics that we should discuss tonight, so I hope you've prepared your subtopics. And this is what I think the new advance in, I suppose, discussions is all about. Open space technology, which is more about being a bit more open, and instead of being an eyes forward presentation, it's all about you guys and all of us talking and discussing the topics that we are going to discuss, and coming up with some kind of resolutions. I guess trying to find our path as if we're out on a boat at sea. So let's move swiftly ahead. So the first topic is, what is the future of Java web development? And this is really a chance for everyone to have a pitch. I mean, some of the things that I'm thinking about is, for example, where we are with sort of the web application frameworks, where does Ajax fit in versus rich clients like Flash, and there's obviously a lot more there. If you've had any other experience with Tapestry or Wicket, or done any sort of scripting language, or even Ruby on Rails, now's the time to really bring this forward to the discussion. So we really need about 3 or 4 topics that we're going to discuss in about half an hour, so that we do finish at 8 o'clock or just after 8. So if anybody wants to start, what are your topics? Anyone got any topics? And now what I'm going to do is fill in. So what should be topic number 1? Get out of this. What should be topic number 1?
Is this just general topics?
No, this is what's the future of Java web development. If you're doing any sort of front-end development work, for example, struts, what have you been struggling with? For example, if you've been struggling with Ajax, this is the thing that you might want to, what's your opinion? I know what my opinion is on some of the struts, web work sort of issues are. And for example, I think we're not quite there in terms of how we integrate Ajax into these web applications. So if that's a topic, say yes. Or has anybody got any other topics?
Well, it's
Flash?
Well, yeah, okay, so we're at work at the moment now. I'm a Flash developer as well.
Yeah.
I do some Java as well, but with the Java guys, the hardcore Java guys at work, we're trying to come up with a way of much more efficiently integrating the two. So you're talking consuming the same data and presenting it in a manner that Flash can automatically consume much more easily. So that allows you to generate HTML versions of the site from the same content that Flash version uses to or the Ajax version uses to display itself. and that includes auto-generation of client-side classes based on the services.
So that's basically what, Flash generation, or?
Well, the Java would automatically generate the required subclasses and things for ActionScript.
Right. So we're going to say Flash. Anybody disagree? Flash. Anyone here done any web application work regarding struts or web work?
I mean, I think the whole component versus request thing is quite an interesting one.
Right. So really, I'll do the Flash up there and these struts
You
down.
can do Flash, Flex, Ajax. They all sort of the same. Yes, the view, PFP,
Which is
Request versus action, or what is it? Request action versus component, as in Java server basis, I would say.
right?
And then you've got the struts, web work, I guess. Is that enough? Or does anyone really want to discuss Ajax really? Or is that, has anyone done
Yeah, we can probably put Ajax in the same basket as Flash and Flex.
Right.
Pretty much in the same problem space, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got three there that we want to discuss. So, good. About less than 7 on each one. So, okay, the first one then is Flash, Flex, and Ajax. So it might be better if you guys will turn around and start talking.
I mean, if we got time for these three, I think Java going open source is quite interesting as well.
Count it as an extremely mature technology in terms of its scalability being the major point, but also the fact that there are two frameworks, open source frameworks in existence. You can just say two because the rest you don't really hear of. And both of these are entirely service-oriented architecture driven. So they're entirely based on actually creating an application as opposed to a website, which has given Ajax a lot of traction because it can add in the sort of things that Flash tries to offer into existing websites without necessarily having to worry about direct services being executed as a result of a user action, which is what these two existing frameworks do. So we're only just starting to actually think about other types of framework that we can implement. And something that jumped to my attention yesterday was that I think they're making a Swing framework, are they? Is it JSR, a new JSR for a client-side framework for Swing?
That might be right. That might be something to do with, I guess, the tooling, the sort of things that go into Matisse and NetBeans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be a framework for helping you write these sort of GUI applications.
So I'm looking towards that really, with the years of experience people have had with Java, to actually act as a mirror to actually what we're trying to do with Flash and Ajax, and maybe the way to go. And so it all revolves around direct integration with the server there as well.
Well, I mean, I suppose it's a bit like what Google, the GWT. Since that's very much trying to go towards a client-server programming model of having client-based kind of controls and having them interacting asynchronously and abstracting away. I suppose that's sort of touching on the component-based thing, but that's a vision of Ajax as being more like classic Swing-based development.
Yeah, that's interesting. It depends on, I guess, on what businesses want to do and how they want to show off their business to the users. If they feel, especially now with, say, like the videos that go on with YouTube or or Google Video, it might be a good idea to actually use Flash instead of Ajax for some things, especially if you want to do the Flash video sort of thing, and that's really, I suppose, could be important to model dresses for, in
fact, when you have situations like heavy multimedia or like do really serious vector graphics or some of those heavy stuff, you really don't have an option with Ajax. That's where Ajax stops for you. The real benefit of Ajax, I think, is that the core, if you're comparing JavaScript developers to ActionScript developers, then you're going to have a lot more people who are more familiar with just plain old JavaScript. And so, Adobe has come up with what is called the Flex Ajax Bridge. It's a project that allows you to sort of link Ajax and then Flex and be able to script across them. And so if you go onto an application like, I think Google Finance is it, or Yahoo Finance, I'm not very sure, you actually see a site that has the HTML bits, interactive JavaScript and all that. And then there's a very rich graph set in there, that's doing all the speedy stuff you want to do with graphing and all that. And they interact with the Flex bit of the application, and then you can see it selecting the HTML bits through the Flex Ajax bridge. So that's something really interesting. I've seen like applications where you have like a Flex application overlaid on sort of a Google Map type application. So you have a little mashup going on there. But you have a transparent Flex application, and you can actually do like draw, because Flash has a drawing API. That's really, really powerful. You can actually do like real-time interaction and drawing over that. Use Flash, the capability to do like socket connections to the server, transmit large amounts of data with what's that called again? Is it ASF or the binary form AMF? That's a binary format in Flash that allows you to transmit loads of data, across the wire, but compressed. So these are areas where you actually see Flash Flex just leap across, just leave a really big move in terms of what you can do with Ajax and what you can do with.
We haven't really seen anything at the moment because Ajax can use XML HTTP requests to send and receive data, but Flash has about 7 protocols, and one of which is the new socket connection, which is the same as a Java socket. In fact, it can communicate with one. And 2 of the examples of it in use at the moment are someone's written a MySQL client, which is just in Flash. So you visit the web page, and you can literally communicate with MySQL database directly. And the other one is a VNC client. So if you've got real VNC running on a system, you can display the mouse moving around, clicking icons and things. So I actually think it's quite a good basis for building some of the stuff that we're expecting, some of these, going back to dumb terminals and using everything online, things that Google really wants to do.
Isn't this just reinventing the app?
Yes. This is exactly the point, and I think actually there's going to be 3 contenders next year for this exact same space. We'll have Microsoft Sentry, which directly competes with Flex, and we'll have, I reckon the Java applet is coming back because bandwidth is so unimportant now that the size of the JRE is just not a problem. So yeah, there's going to be 3, it should be really good.
Well, I guess that with this, as Java developers, it's going to be, are these open APIs? Can someone else start using Flash immediately, or without downloading, not Macromedia, Adobe stuff now? Would they be able to just pump out Flash? Because that would be really...
The new compiler is actually written in Java, and you can just download it as a free standalone compiler. And the ActionScript 3 is so similar to Java that it allows me to jump between them, and I've never really sat down and properly learned either.
And apart from that, I think last week there was an announcement about Adobe and the Mozilla Foundation collaborating on the compiler for the new VM project called Tamarin. on if you check the
That's a spice, isn't it?
yeah.
Salty spice.
So yeah, Flash is standard, and I think the spec is always it's built on ECMA 262, and that's a standard, and so really I don't know. I mean,
there are open source compilers already for it.
Yeah, there are open source compilers for Flash.
Because with the applet, well, let me step back. The one thing that sort of piqued my interest was the drawing API. I know somebody's done a canvas, and so be able to draw. I know we know that Macromedia, Adobe has great drawing tools out there, and so if you could do that with web applications, tell whatever's rendering that screen or a browser to draw your graphs, it could do very well for reporting applications. And I think the other point is with this Flash versus Ajax, it's the way things will be integrated together. And what I mean is, like with applets, you haven't got that extensive control. I remember you set a couple of attributes and parameters, and the applet was restricted from communicating outside of the sandbox. So like for example, you can't write an applet that would magically resize with the browser window if the user pulled that window to whatever he wanted. I know you can do it with Flash, but some reworking of applet technology is definitely required.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what's coming in SE6? Because I think one of the big focuses there has been the desktop. And I haven't really paid attention to what they've got.
No.
But I think one of the things has been the easier desktop integration. And if they've got something in terms of the applet, because it's an underused technology. It's been, we've had it for 11 years, well, 10 years, and I suppose they've still been bubbling away. They've never really taken off. And Ajax is both a response to their limitations and an attempt to sort of do away with them. But
also, WebStart, which is Java WebStart is something that has just come out from Adobe. Something similar to it has just come out called Apollo, and it works in the same sort of principles. In that you have your thing on your client, and then you just distribute apps through them which have a bit more power than using web pages. So Apollo. The other thing is there are SDKs for Java and .NET that allow you to compile Swifts just writing pure Java and pure .NET, so you don't have to use any of them.
I think that's really interesting because I remember hearing I think it was John Posse around the 18th or 19th one, I can't remember, but they had Jonathan Swiss on, and he was talking about what a network can allow you to do now with flat clients. And so I think it was a question that was related to applets, and then related to sort of where Sun was headed with Java. And this was last year for the open source, but he was talking more about flat clients and the fact that we pretty much went to the browser because of the distribution channel that we had there. And so now you can do most of the things you do on the browser with some flat clients, and then just rely on what the network allows you to do. And that is in the same line what Apollo allows you to do. It's the same programming model you have with FlashFlex, same technology, but being able to put that on your desktop and then do speedy stuff with it.
Yeah, I mean, something like Eclipse Rich Client delivered over WebStart.
Yeah.
Now that's when bandwidth isn't really a problem. They're 20 meg download. Yeah. What the hell? Yeah. Then because then you get the advantage of mature tooling, a rich environment, and an easy distribution method, which won't make people panic. Whereas people, I don't know, I think people will be more comfortable with a WebStart app than they would downloading an arbitrary, kind of Macromedia installed in whatever. which would be the .NET alternative. I suppose the alternative would be kind of embedded ActiveX controls.
That's a no-go with i7 basically for now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a thing.
All right, ding, ding, ding. Next topic, which is request action versus component-orientated frameworks. So, anyone going to fire ahead with that?
Well,
Faces. Oh, you've got a job. You've got a job, haven't you, in Strut? So
I'm now an evangelist for a framework called Rife, and it's the most beautiful Java framework ever. So yeah, Rife is a component-based framework. Right? It also uses sort of the same ideas from request-based frameworks in terms of how it allows you to wire, how your actions work and stuff like that. But component-based in the sense that you can actually create, full websites and embed them in websites because it promotes those principles. And you get what Rife gives you is a single jar file, say, that sort of houses the whole framework. But in that single jar file, you're going to have a persistence layer in there that allows you to do all sorts of spiffy stuff with your database. It generates a database for you if you want, and then maps them to your simple produce. And then it shines in meta programming. It has in Rife we have what are called constraints, and so you could pick like an object and say a human object, and say there's a name property on there, and that name property you put a constraint, say it has a maximum of 10 characters, and putting that metadata in there allows Rife to generate a form for you that makes sure that field allows you to put in only 30 characters. It makes sure that it does all the data conversion for you. It generates a database table for you and then applies the same constraints. It does your validation after you've done your submits, applies the same constraints. And so you're pretty much defining something in one place and then applying it throughout all the layers that Rife has. And that is something that is, I think, is really it's very valuable in terms of how little you have to do and how much you can get from the framework.
I think Seam is quite interesting with that, being a full stack, blending of some of the ideas. I mean, the Hibernate validator does the same thing. It does schema generation, it does constraint application. It's all about metadata. And so with that, you have annotated POJOs, and it goes all the way from building the data to I think with I don't know if Seam provides it out of the box, but I know that there's something that's being looked at by several people in My Faces to do Dynaforms basically using facelets, and it inspects the backing class and generates lists or forms on the fly, and enables you then to just wire to arbitrary actions and persist them. And I think that's very cool. That kind of stuff where you only have to. It's kind of some of the idea of convention and configuration, because you only have to configure the stuff you actually want to change. The rest is all free.
Yes. I think it's more moving on to ease of development. I can definitely see that. But there's also a graphical side to it, I think. I don't know what Rife supplies, but definitely Faces is designed for that sort of, Sunzone Java Studio Creator is a prime example. And go on.
What does Rife give you in terms of components? Is
Well, no, it doesn't give you, Rife doesn't give you components if you're talking widgets here.
Yeah.
No,
So
it doesn't give you
components.
components. No,
Right.
it's Rife's template engine is such that you have Rife gives you 4 tags really. There's a placeholder tag, and then there's a block tag, which really is a placeholder tag, that's not displayed in your or sent. It's not output to your final template. Rice template is actually it's one of the key things you actually learn about it. It's really simple. You create your blueprint, say, and say that I want this value to be here, that value to be here. I want certain placeholders at certain places, and then you go back to your controller, which will be a Java class, say, and you're able to spiff data back into the placeholders you've marked up in there. But then you're also able to pull data out of it. It works in sort of a bi-directional way. And so you don't have a situation like you have in PHP where you're actually doing all sorts of logic in the template. All your logic is actually in a Java class, and all you have in Rice templates are placeholders. And that is something that's, I think, is a differentiator between Rice templates and then what you find in other places like JSP or whatever, because you know that all the control for your application is in one place, and you cannot do any sort of logic at all in the templates. It's just a dumping place for you to send output to, or to retrieve formatted output from.
Well, I mean, Facelets has got a really, really powerful templating engine, which why it's used in C. And I think Facelets has now become the default choice for JSF.
Is that usurping even Craig McClanahan's shell? I'm putting a bit of praise in there. Is that usurping him? Carry on.
No, I mean, I think in terms of adoption, I mean, the only thing with Facelets though is that tooling hasn't kept up with it.
Ah, right.
Now that will change. I think NetBeans and IntelliJ have got some plugins to do, because basically it's all of the Facelets all the Facelets pages are pure HTML, fully validated pure HTML. So using an XML editor, you get at least some level of validation. But it needs to be properly namespace aware to be able to do any of the auto completion, which now and the stuff which has started to actually get quite good with like my Eclipse JSF editor hasn't actually caught up sadly with the Facelets yet. But I mean, Facelets has this, like tiles, so those kind of templates just more powerful. You can take arbitrary, like the really cool thing with Facelets is you can take basically a plain XHTML page with plain HTML stuff on it and add attributes which convert it at runtime into JSF components. So you could actually edit that in Dreamweaver.
Oh right, that's a big difference.
You can edit your Facelets, and there is actually a plugin for Dreamweaver which handles those extensions. So you can, that's the kind of the power of it, that you can just write HTML pages and mark them up, with additional stuff that means that Facelets knows about, and so that simplifies a lot of the design element.
I think you have the same thing with Rice, because if your output again, Rice template is not just XHTML, it could be SQL. In fact, the database layer uses Rice templating to generate your SQL code for you. So it could be your templates are whatever output you're trying to get out there, and then you have markers for them, and then you just spiff whatever the output should be to it. We do Ajax with DWR, so you can sort of add to the layers as you want. But at the base, you're able to do valid XHTML if that's where your output should be, and you can create valid XHTML, put value tags in there, which allow you to put certain output back in there, and then be able to see it in the browser or whatever as you're designing your website.
So you have to take the whole, can you just slice off the bits that you want in terms of if you want to use it for presentation and use each of these behind or whatever you want?
I should think so. It allows you to integrate with Spring, say, and so you actually have a full stack, but you're not forced to use it all. You can plug parts that you don't want rather than unplug. certain stuff you want in there. And a lot of the guys on the mailing list are using Hibernate for their persistence. Some of the guys actually, but you lose out on certain things, like allowing you to generate a database and stuff for you, which I feel quite valuable.
Okay, so that's the end of that topic. I wrote down structs and web work, whereas I'm not sure we have enough structs developers actually to discuss that really. So I would generalize that final topic as, what do you see in 2007? What will the frameworks be? I know here there's going to be Rife and Seam already discussed. But how does that integrate with everything else that's been thrown into the mix, like GWT? And it depends what you're trying to do. Obviously, a lot of it depends on what you're trying to do, what you want to get out of it. And so, ideas and comments, thoughts.
Well, first of all, I think I want to say that Java going free and open source is big. It's really big, and you're already starting to see. I want to say starting to see people like is it iSoft? I was reading that on the server side yesterday, who have open sourced their Ajax framework. And then you have, and iSoft, I think everybody says is one of the biggest Ajax frameworks that's been out there for a while now. Yeah. And they pretty much pinned, they've been working on it, I guess, for a while, but pinned it against Java going free and open source. So that's just by the way. But you're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot more people, just a lot more activity in the Java space. There's so much more. I think someone mentioned this, I can't remember who, but there's so much more adoption of Java in Asia and Africa and in Europe generally. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see more people, because the network is allowing people to do a lot more things now. Yeah. And really, to be able to play on the network, you want to have applications that are actually serving your needs. And Java has increasingly been the platform of choice for doing stuff on the network. And so we're going to see all these people actually doing a lot more on the network, basically. That's what I think. Yeah,
I think I watched the webcast yesterday from San Francisco, coming at 5:30 London time, and I think Jonathan Swartz said something about we're going to ride the Linux way, or the Linux path, which means like that's the reason why they've gone with GPL version 2. Yeah. And so that will open the doors for a lot of people in the world to get on board with Java. So now that it's open source, because it can be distributed now, and through the grapevine, through the podcast, Java Posse, there was a comment about somebody talking to Ubuntu to actually get that. Yeah. So it's quite an exciting time, and
they've already. I think they are the first distro to put it in.
Yeah.
You mentioned full stack quite a bit. I think if anyone can really nail full stack in its fullest meaning, initiatives like GWT and Laszlo, and with Laszlo in particular, you can generate Swift XHTML and now JSON. Then if someone can really nail full stack so that you can actually pick and choose what your client is, with conversion devices, we've got this nice phone here, just right on our doorstep, then they've got a lot of money to make there. Mm-hmm.
But is it going to be made with desktops, or where is it going to go? Is it going to go with mobile devices, or is it going to be a whole?
I think we're going to have a situation where Java platform is great for all of us, and then we're creating our service-oriented architecture-based stuff on there and all that. Mm-hmm. And then we're just going to have multiple clients accessing the same databases, accessing the same APIs, accessing the same platforms. And the tools we have now allow us to do it. If you're building applications on the Adobe Java stack, where you have Flex and Flash on web browsers, but then also from next year we're going to have Apollo, where you can use the same skill set, same platform to build applications on the desktop. And then you have Flashlight, which is sort of like J2ME, but a J2ME for Adobe. And so you're using that to build applications on devices. Then you're using the same skill set, same platform, building services that all these, and they all have they all can access the same protocols, XML over HTTP. You're going to have so much more value for all the catalogs you're creating in terms of your web services, but then you're going to have multiple devices being able to access all these services.
Ideally, actually, we're talking in data exchange traditionally, but I think we could also be talking in terms of code exchange, so a format to be developed which is actually a generalized version of code, pseudocode, that can be distributed to various clients using various technologies and then executed on those clients, instead of just the data. So something like Genie does that with Java bytecode, but again, format that anything can use.
In the Ajax sort of area, there's a lot of consolidation that's going on because as it starts to mature, I think it seems to be forming around, a consensus is forming around Dojo as being the kind of tool set of choice. And what's interesting is that that's starting to be picked up by the JSF guys. You know, My Faces have integrated Dojo as part of the core product, and so they're going to start. They've already migrated a couple of their widgets to use Dojo on the client, and I think that, from a components perspective, is very interesting because you get the ease of component design of server-side managed components, but with the quality, and richness of rendering of of the Dojo. I think the JSF area is that's going to be a quite powerful force. Where people can build these really rich widgets and leverage the pain that the Dojo guys have gone through to get there.
Yeah, I do think that certainly in terms of debugging, there's going to be a lot of frameworks that, like GWT, you spend a lot of the time actually on the server side, instead of hacking around with JavaScript, and I think it's going to be open the doors for that sort of technology. Once they've nailed how to do a suggestive and auto completion widget and do all the home and end keys and do the arrow keys, then it's there to be used in server-side code, and then all you do is put it together.
So I suppose in that regard, in many ways, component-based architecture is becoming inevitable. Because, the kind of flow between, I suppose then the question is not so much whether the page, whether you're using rich components, because you're not going to start with a blank page every time and have to code in 3 tons of JavaScript. You just want to have, some quick way of rendering out this stuff. So it's whether you have the kind of the very abstract kind of backing beam model like JSF, where the processing cycle is slightly abstracted from the fact you just have a piece of code which combines, effectively combines both the model and the controller. Or you have much more flow based thing. I mean, Webflow is a really interesting thing, and I think JBoss have got their Webflow, which is part of Seam, I think.
Okay, we snuck it on the head for that question. I think
not in production.
But Jean was teaching it. You're teaching EJB3.
I prefer not speaking.
Okay.
I have no problem speaking.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go on, John. We're not going to harm you. Then.
I think the whole problem is the lack of app servers. I mean, JBoss is really the only choice.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. Yeah. Isn't that right? Because they've not implemented all of EJB3, I heard, or the J2EE, Java EE.
Well, the problem for them, the problem with JBoss at the moment is that Tomcat 6 isn't final, and they're depending on Tomcat 6 to deliver the web component of Java EE5.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be a true implementation of the spec, it needs a servlet 2.5, JSP 2.1.
Right.
And so I think that's holding a lot of people. That's holding back like the JSF 1.2 and.
Okay, so I suppose Gavin and his boys and Mark Fleury have a lot of work to do for that. Yeah. Yeah. So is that going to be in JBoss 5? I'm thinking of looking at. I've got a private project that I'm thinking of.
But EJB3 and JBoss is fine.
Yes, fine.
The whole J2E's JE stack.
Yeah. Yeah.
JEE or Java EE?
Yeah.
Java EE. They should have, I don't know, called it J3EE or something. But I guess Java EE or G. I can't wait to be interviewed about that one. How have you been programming? You've been programming in G. It looks. Yeah. Well, my view of EJB is that it's, having not used it, it looks a whole lot better. The entity being programming model, what were they thinking of? 4 different interfaces for an implementation and an XML descriptor. I don't know.
And good luck debugging.
Yeah. And that is just for one table, and you can't do any severe joins. I've been working in investment banks long enough to know that they want serious joins. No, but having said that, it's really a good thing, EJB3, because the only thing that probably will stand in its way is that a lot of businesses are using Hibernate at the moment. So what is it about EJB3 that should cause a business person to start changing their legacy code now and to start using EJB3? So I'm not too sure about that, but for new projects, yes. And that's a good thing, really, if they want a standard, well, Java persistent architecture, the JPA, if they want to be able to port it around and not, in theory you can do that. You can move from top link to Hibernate and change databases if you don't use any proprietary features, of course.
Well, I mean, that's the great thing, is that if you're a Hibernate user, you might as well do, you do Hibernate annotations, and then you're pretty much with minor adjustments in compliance with the JPA spec. You might have to take some stuff out and replace it with top link add-ons, but that's the great part. I mean, I think particularly for Hibernate users, it's a great win, because they get everything for free. And I mean, I suppose also it does make doing like sort of stateless or stateful session beams really easy. You just bung a couple of annotations.
Yes.
You don't have to worry. Less XML. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, it's got the whole dependency, resource lookup thing, which, to be honest, is a bit pointless if you're using Spring, because Spring does it better. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, I agree with that. EJB is EJB3 is a very much a great thing to have if you can just annotate. Particularly if you're using Java 5, you've got to use Java 5 for EJB3, and it's just crossing over into subtopic number 3. So I'll leave that out for a bit. And
a good thing about EJB3 is that it's a new methodology. It's agile. Unit testing a lot easier. It's learned a lot of lessons from Spring. It's just using POJOs. And I think the last couple of years have really come about with, okay, how do we write test for all? How do we write unit tests for all? It's something you could never do with EJB2 at all.
No.
It was nearly impossible.
Or the one before that, it was quite difficult. Instead of the concoction that I'm talking about, Cactus, that was a bit nonsense. I mean, I spent a couple of hours trying to run Cactus years ago, many years ago, and I sort of got it working. I knew it just wasn't worth for the bank, because it couldn't really prove anything except it could run in a container, and it was just doing some simple selects and, you know, and inserts and stuff like that. So I guess that's a good thing. The one thing that might stop EJB adoption, there are some diehards, and I'm talking about diehards with stored procedures who say everything must be, every business rule must be in a database as a stored procedure, and obviously there's no, you can't use the entity manager to help you there. But what you could do, as you've always done, is use a stateless session bean and then call the methods, but you're not going to win anything from the JPA.
Yeah.
So
you might as well stick to iBetas.
Yeah. Yes, of course, iBetas. So has anyone done anything serious with EJB3? No. So.
Well, I mean, AppFuse 2, I think is very useful, because that's that's based around JPA, and you know it's a really a nice, clean, and it's also a Maven 2 project. So I think that's when once that goes final, I think that's going to push a lot of people to exploring it.
Right. Yeah.
AppFuse sounds very similar to Rife, you were describing. So you try AppFuse? No. It's Matt Rabel's creation for generating the whole application by just putting a few parameters in, and it generates the whole database, whether using Hibernate or whatever. And generates right to the front end as well, and gives you validation to the whole thing.
No, I've not tried it.
Where Rife shines is it doesn't actually generate the application. It does bytecode re-engineering, and so you don't actually have like source to actually go edit or anything. At runtime, it generates that, and then it sort of has the Rife class load that goes behind the scenes. That's work with your simple projects. And when you're using Rife, your projects stay clean, and then you create like the extensions. You don't like go and extend anything in the framework. All your constraints to it are actually sort of auto-managed in the background for you. So they created separately from your projects. And so again, like you're talking about testing, that's a big win for it when you have to actually test your application. And then Rife allows you to easily do out of container testing. And so you can actually script user journey for going from, say, a home page to some other page, and then actually interrogate your objects and see if the page flow works as it should and stuff like that. That comes out of the framework. So.
Has anyone done any EJB with Rife yet? Or I know it's got some persistence finger.
I've seen some posts on the mailing list, but I don't know. I haven't done it personally.
No.
So
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Ding ding. Spring Framework versus EJB3. Now, that's an interesting thing, because we're not talking about the entire Spring Framework here. We're talking about the parts that does the EJB persistence and the Hibernate, and whether you should still be using Hibernate and Spring and not using EJB3. I think there's a bit of debate on that.
Yeah, I mean they're not mutually exclusive, because you can use JPA in Spring just as you can in an EJB3 container. And arguably, one of the things about Spring is that it makes you container agnostic, and you can just run in a web container. So you could do JPA with Spring in Tomcat, You get 90% of what you get in, in a full, in WebLogic. I mean, yes, obviously you don't get that.
Yeah.
The heavyweight XA transaction and all of that.
Right.
But,
Right.
chances are you ain't going to need it.
Yes, of course. Yeah, unless you're a financial institution or you've got serious volumes, and then you probably might think about bending BA's arm behind its back. Please get this thing out. We really do need to start developing with it. Well, that's the next topic. But so what I would say to that is that that's very good. That Spring can do that with, I'm sure, the Java persistence architecture. And
because I think part of WebLogic strategy is is embracing Spring as their differentiator to JBoss.
Yes. Yes.
Because JBoss are the anti-Spring, not invented here camp. Because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And so.
So what was that debate? Because it's really strange.
It is bizarre.
Yeah.
I just think it's just a personality thing. That they don't play well with others.
That's really.
It's also a commercial interest to get people to use EJB3.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah. Well, I suppose if it's leveraging on standards, it doesn't make a difference to any of us. I mean, I use Spring and Hibernate, and I like Spring because it gives, what does it give? A Hibernate template class. And then off you go. So I presume there's the same thing for JPA.
You've got JPA template. I mean, that's the other great thing is you can migrate from, if you have a Spring app, which is using Hibernate 3, and you can basically just annotate up your domain model, change the persistence provider to be, basically rewire it up to be JPA, and that's it. You retest it and you're done. So,
right.
They aren't. I think Spring. I think it's quite narrow-minded to see Spring as purely an alternative. It does make a lot of everything but JPA redundant. Because like I said, the resource injection that EJB3 does, where you can basically annotate a Jindy location on a property, and as if by magic the container will go away and find it, which is good. It's great, much better than having to write all that boilerplate code to do that. Yeah. But the fact is that Spring does it much better. Spring.
I can testify.
It just works.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's not as rich.
I suppose one thing that I suppose differentiates Spring from EJB3 is the aspect orientated program. Now that is addressed in Spring and not in the specs. And for example, there's one case where I've used AOP, and where you've got a stale database connection in the app server and it just disappears. And what you can do is write an AOP method interceptor, just call it a retry interceptor, and you just can say watch. You plug your interceptor into a certain DAO and say like you get the user from the database who's just logged in, because that's what happens. The user logs in first thing in the morning, the database has gone down. And so what happens, you get the database connection is closed, the interceptor that you've got running behind your DAO or in front of it sees that that's a stale database exception and then calls that method again, and you do it 5 times and put a sleep time of 100 milliseconds. And that 9 times out of 10, that should get rid of your stale database connection. And the user doesn't even see that. Now that's one exception or advantage, because you're not going to get called at night. Why is my application not working?
Another really cool usage that I've seen and used is is using...
Not that I've been called, actually. I'm not admitting to that. Yeah.
Is using an interceptor and EH-cache to cache method calls. So you can use it for stuff that hits the database. Yeah. Or you can actually do the kind of second level caching that, you know, like if you have a remote call that's going to take a while or return a whole bunch of data, you can use EH-cache and declaratively say for these methods on this class. Cache it and apply and of course you can have, you know, EH-cache, quite a sophisticated retention and eviction policy. Right. And that means you can make method calls really fast because that's transparent to the app. You don't write any code for that.
Right. Oh, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to knock that one on the head then, because that's okay, the adoption of Java EE5. Why is it taking so long for the major users? Yeah.
I think IBM is going to hold their hand up there, because they're the worst offenders by far. Yeah. But I suppose IBM have got, you know, lots of customers, lots of the big names that want to, and they don't want to rock the boat really for those sort of customers, and obviously they don't need the bleeding edge features if the specification, you know, is so new. That's in their defense, but it's not good for us developers. I mean, I would love to start programming with generics. I can't because of the, you know, the companies and the vendors' policy not to bring out a server. In fact, I've heard the WebSphere is going to be 2008. Good. Really?
Yeah, but that's.
Because, I mean, WebSphere 6 is 2 years old.
Yeah, it is.
3 years old now. It's crazy.
It's based on Eclipse 3.0 code. The stuff that I've seen.
Yeah, well, the client side is 3.0, and
But I do know that the customers themselves will, because of they sometimes have bugs in the JVMs, they will like put out 1.5.0_/09 and deploy that and run the application just to iron out, get the speed increases for their on the internet side, or behind out there in the amber zone, or whatever you would like to call the demilitarized zone between the internet and the corporate internet working structure. So it's kind of interesting that the customers are using JVMs, but they can't really use the new application programming stuff that's been out there for more than a year. So
is there support for just base Java 5?
there's not official. I mean, who would be a manager who would?
No, I think with WebSphere 6.1.
I've not seen it yet.
I think WAS 6.1, I think there was an option for they basically had a JDK compatibility pack,
right?
Where you could run it on JSE 5.
Right.
But that would be a huge benefit, because if anyone's ever written Java 5 and tried to go back, it's like the worst thing ever. So you just miss the generics and all that stuff that goes with it.
Well, I think that Logic 9 we're using Java 5.
Comparison to you guys, I haven't a clue when I'd use generics at all.
When you use them?
Yeah, when.
So say you declare a list and all you have is objects in there. You can say this list is now of type string. So it saves a lot of problems at runtime when you get class cast exceptions. You can now check. Right, this should be a string. If you try and put something else in.
I mean, the compiler will enforce that you can't put anything else in that that list by a string. So if you try to put an int into that do my list or add this int, then it'll go no, you can't. And it also means that the return type of a method, because many a method will return a collection like a list or a map or a set. This will tell you this is a list of business account objects. So you don't have to guess, because with poorly documented API you end up having to kind of either look at the code or cross your fingers and cast it.
Yeah.
Yeah, aside from the fact that your code looks more elegant, you can actually state what you want to do, and then if used with a new for in
for
each syntactic sugar, then it makes your code actually look quite nicer. So it goes hand in hand.
But can't you tell from a method that you're returning an account object?
Well, you can guess.
You can guess.
If they've named it nicely, like get account list, you can guess that it's probably account objects, but that can be ambiguous, because if you have 3 different type of account objects, and then how do you know which one? So this means that at compile time you specify explicitly what the method's going to return, and it really.
So why does it help? You've got an old program that returns an account object, and it doesn't use generics, and you're saying it's kind of like pray and hope you got the right thing.
No. If it returns a collection of account objects, because previously the method signature would be list get account objects,
right?
And now with generics that would be list. Open bracket, square brackets, account, so get account objects.
You can actually see in the method. Okay, thanks.
So it also applies to classes now. The class is now genericized. But previously when you had a class, it was just a basic class of it. Now it's a class for a particular type of class.
Mm-hmm.
So it extends further. And you can use that, like I've seen that used for hibernate data. You can have a base data is for a particular class and have sort of base get by ID. Generic sort of stuff, based on a class, not just for collections of nodes.
Does that conflict with auto-boxing as well? You mentioned auto-boxing.
No, auto-boxing only applies to primitives.
Different.
I'm back.
Is there any hidden speed when you use generics?
No.
Because it's all done by the default. It's basically just a compiler enforcement.
In fact, and that's what I was talking about before with the corporate customers favouring the JVM5 actually, because they're so much faster, the JVMs, and a lot of bugs have been fixed for.
And also there's the 64-bit JVMs. The 1.5 64-bit ones, which are really helping in terms of large data volumes. Like we have an application which basically it holds a day's worth of trades in memory. So that can comfortably fill the 2.5 gig limit of a 32-bit JVM.
Right.
So you could. I've heard of other sites using the thing which have JVMs up to 12 gigs.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. That's getting into some different territories, I guess, and where we're hosting farms and virtual private servers. Where, that's really good, really.
I think that's the performance advantages and also the reliability. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I was talking to this vendor who provide this system, and they were saying that they used to get customers getting crashes with 1.4 JVMs maybe once every month, every 2 months, but now they're down. Well, they'll go the people they've got on 1.5 and down to once every 6 months. Where they get a JVM hard stop.
Yeah. Well, I suppose this is relevant to Java 5. We're talking about Java 5. Well, I think yesterday there was a Mustang, a Java SE6 release candidate, and so it's starting to suck a bit. You know, IBM should really ramp up that release date for, and BEA should really get with the program. It's really a bit disappointing that we have to wait for 2008 before we see a certified Java EE5 application server.
Then the Java 7 betas will be out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yes, of course, yeah. It's Dolphin, not Mustang, yeah. Okay, let's... Grid computing and Ginny guy. Not at all, right.
The only thing I would say about grid computing is that it's quite funny to me how, I don't know if it was the same to you or not, I can't profess to having worked through these years, but it's kind of like we're going back 25 years. Not in a bad way, but the last 25 years have been entirely sort of market force driven and cost driven. But we're actually going back to the academic roots of computing and working out cost efficient ways of using cycles. This goes back to I was mentioning distributed code instead of just distributed data. So we're almost going back to having dumb terminals just with fatter clients. And you know, that everyone wants everything on. There's people going around with half-gig memory sticks with all of their apps on, nothing that uses the registry. They've got their life on there, and Google's backing their life up for them. And you don't have to worry, the computer's more dispensable when that happens. So if you have a house fire, for example, you don't lose anything. $5 a month will get you automated backup of everything you own. And I think another aspect of grid computing, Amazon are offering, you basically pay for your cycles. You pay for as much time as you use. So I've got virtual private hosting, virtual shared hosting, and I'll pay a certain amount per month, and I don't know how much of that is wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm not using my bandwidth, maybe I'm not using my maximum CPU out constantly. I'm not at all. But if I'm paying how much cycles I'm using, how much RAM I'm using, then it's a far more efficient way for consumers to use computing.
Right, that's interesting. So how does that fit in with, I suppose, Java EE? How would people start using that? Sort of, will there be Ginny support in Java EE6, you reckon, or will people start just using Ginny out of the box? And the reason why I brought that up because about 4 years ago, Ginny was trumpeted as a great alternative to EJBs when it had all the problems, entity beans and somebody actually, I was working for a customer that seriously were thinking of running a Ginny server for their application instead of doing EJB. So.
Does anyone have a good grasp of Ginny? Because there was
no.
So saying the Java there was a Java 2.
Yeah. Free. Yeah.
And
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, the concepts of it, but I don't know how that relates to Ginny and what it actually does.
Well, it's kind of interesting, as in like deployable code that you could run, and I don't know what it means. If it's a virus, it could take over a P900.
The funny thing about it is that they're distributing code that you can then run on the client. I think they want to get it working for JME as well, but I don't know. That's just what I got from that. You might not be able to. But the funny thing is that that's kind of distributed code, so there's the security problems maybe there. And so to get around security problems with configuration, they're using Groovy as their configuration instead of XML. They could have used Java, but they didn't want people to be able to just put malicious code in their configuration, so when the config gets loaded in, it runs rampant. So they're using Groovy there, but the product itself is distributing code to our clients that may be able to intercept in one client.
Yeah.
How they do the security.
That's
Will we be using the because of this dynamic nature?
It's just similarities in syntax makes it identifiable, and it's not verbose as it's slightly more powerful than XML. I'm not a massive fan of XML, but too many things, but yeah, it has its uses definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Graham, you're...
I don't know, I don't get Ginny at all.
No, I don't see it because I don't use it that much, but I've listened to a few discussions. Anyone got anything else to add? Or anything more on how you're going to architect the new enterprise? Webby? Anyone got any opinions on the newest? Any surprises, any predictions for 2007?
It's got to be what the new applications will be, really.
Yeah.
It goes back to saying that you have a sort of totally new demographic adopting network computing, so that might present interesting choices. But for now, everybody's creating a MySpace or a YouTube or something, so we don't really have anything to go on as developers. So we should probably start channeling our energy towards Africa, where I come from.
Yes,
and see what we could do. Yeah.
As developers, we can take advantage of the new wave of people which are entirely willing to give up all ownership of everything they own. So all of their music videos themselves, they're more than happy to let everyone else have it online. So it goes back to, again, carrying your life around with you. If it's there anyway, if you can store online your activities, not only what data you have and what pictures you have, but actually what you're doing is stored online as well, then you can go anywhere and access it anywhere.
As long as you have some kind of device. So that's quite interesting. So some sort of mobile, whether it's going to be laptop or the Nokia internet pad on Linux, is definitely some sort of amalgam of a of Mac, PowerBook, and a fold up pad. I don't know. Will probably be the way we conduct some kind of our business in the future, and what we'll probably be writing for. So, as well as people who sit at home.
I think the hardware is increasingly becoming a commodity. I was reading, I think on Slashdot or something 2 days ago, Google is thinking they might distribute phones for free to almost everyone, and then sort of find a way of channeling adverts to them to sort of support. So that's another business model from people want to take over. But if they're going to be distributing phones and they're going to be giving you phones that are quite powerful, and your phone can do almost anything, my phone can grasp and do all that, and then it sort of channels, sort of gives an idea of where you might actually be channeling your energy, because you're going to have the same base hardware amongst your select group of people, and then sort of gives you an idea of where to develop apps to. I don't know.
Okay.
So.
I'm not sure of obviously I missed the beginning of the conversation, but about 8 years ago or something, when Jimmy was coming about in Ericsson, was quite interesting. They had this idea where it could be very useful to utility companies, because if everyone would adopt Jimmy and Ericsson's thing on top of that with a little black box, the idea was that they could actually sell it to utility companies and make utility companies give this black box based on Genie for free, so that electricity companies could switch off, say, every device in the home. Which meant that maybe they didn't have to buy and build an entire new power station, which could save them billions of Ericsson was talking dollars than pounds. So, and the other sort of example that they always had on their website was where you could be at home and switch on your aircon from the car, so that 2 hours later when you would come home.
So, should make you
the latter is more, I don't think they ever reached that, and I don't think they ever will, but the beginning, the first thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, the big news, right, I should say that what we've been discussing, how we're going to architect the new enterprise. We discussed EJB, Spring Framework versus EJB3, adoption of Java EE5, and grid computing. Now, the big event this week, in the last 3 minutes, is the open sourcing of Java. Yay or nay?
I think it's more important politically than practically.
Yes.
It's not really going to. I don't think anyone's really going to start hacking the Java, hacking the JDK, because I mean, the most of the classes in the JDK have been available. The source has been available.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I differ on that because we have JDK, but we also had a bunch of developers, sweating away on the GJC, and so these people can actually concentrate their efforts now on improving the JDK. There's anything to be done there. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Where does that leave the guys on the Harmony project? They've been on it for about 18 months or something like that.
I'm too new to comment. It's really IBM's have been sponsoring that, and really, I think they will join it. They can join the Open JDK team now, as well as do some of their own stuff.
That was the only reason to have an alternative. Really. So.
And it's good to have an alternative. That I can remember back in the day, there was an IBM specific JVM. What was it called? It was Yikes or Crikes? Jikes. Jikes. And that was a very fast JVM.
It's good for devices as well, isn't it? I mean, if everyone's listening, you can get some really fast JVMs running on devices, specifically locked down to, or is that a bad thing?
Well, that's the thing, like you said with Linux now, embedded in everything.
Exactly.
That's the thing, JVMs are all the same.
Especially like power devices, which are cheaper for third world countries.
Hasn't that been the argument for not open sourcing it for all as well, the fragmentation issue?
Yeah, I think they wanted control and stewardship,
So you don't end up with 300 distributions of Java.
I wouldn't know. I
thought that's why they chose the GPL2 to make sure it didn't get forked and forked again.
Yeah. And
does GPL2 allow you to fork?
Well, you can fork it, but if you distribute it, you've got to distribute your changes as well. So in theory, you can do it, but who doesn't want to be compatible with with that bytecode that's out there? I mean, I think it's great for researchers because there's free reign. If you want to implement closures and you're like of the Sedgwick or Knuff, you can go out there and do your research with nobody on your back, and you can patch your own release, and you can come up with Java 2, and then if you want, try and push that back to Sun or market it yourself. So that's great, but I think it's not going to touch us that much, at least this year, and it will probably be riding on the Linux wave actually. Because now it's available beyond computers, and we'll see the benefit that way as programmers and developers.
That's one of the benefits.
Yeah.
Because I would install a distro and then disable GJC and then go download the Sun JDK anyway.
Yeah.
But so now for all people, the religious guys out there, they can actually bundle.
And there are a fair amount of Slashdot fans who've been riding, and now the debate is gone. So instead of their brain power going into criticizing, it can now go into helping, and I'm sure it's going to attract some of them, and it's just we should see an explosion, I'm hoping. And it really should push. I think it will give the Java lifeline another decade, maybe even double it. So So,
well, not
yeah.
the slash though.
Yeah.
Slash though is the C code.
Yeah.
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 Two guys, isn't it?
Okay, it's time for a bit.
Tell you what you would do. So, for example, you wanted to change the JDK in some way. Say, okay, I want to do a new string class.
Yeah.
What do you have to do? I mean, to
that you could always do
How
that.
do you write it in? Is it C? Is it no?
I think it's actually Java because you can. There's a for every JDK there's an src.jar, so you could compile it that way, recompile the jar, and people have instrumented the object class. What's the name of the book? The book is O'Reilly's Performance Tuning or something, and there's an example how to instrument the Java lang.object. So you can do that and put in sort of like the time to execute methods, or whatever you wanted to do. You could. If you find the book in files or somewhere, go and have a look at it. Not necessarily buy it, but you can instrument.
It's not something that's written in C++ or something.
No, it isn't. It's actually Java.
It will be Java.
Yeah.
That will be something the slash code.
Yeah.
The Java compiler itself is written in Java.
Yeah.
However, the JVM is partly native code for performance.
And it will have the hooks for the graphics. If you want to look under the graphic, is it the Java 2D or stuff, and for the rendering, then you're going to hit a Java native interface method at some point that ends in 0, which there's no source code for, but there is source code for now.
So I've never written a native code before, so that's Java calling C++. Function.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you wanted to, you'd have to do the same thing for compile something for Windows, Linux, and Mac.
Yeah, and
make a native version for each one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really an issue now, but if you really... It's not an issue if you want for performance, the old-fashioned performance arguments. But what I think may happen is the music and the media support is not as good as it is for, say, like Windows. Windows has a lot of music applications and sound applications, really intense applications and interface, and there's just the Java sound and the Java media framework, which is, I think there's a few people have written an MP3 player in Java, but nobody's going to go even further and write their own media player in Java or a Cubase or a Webase in Java. That would be fantastic, but there's some applications that are limited where you have to use native code if you really want to get the performance.
I think that's what Flash shines now.
Yeah.
Doing multimedia now.
Yeah.
Because the Player 9 runs on Linux, runs on Mac, runs on Windows, and then you have all this functionality where you can do all this beefy stuff on multimedia. If you're doing multimedia apps, you should think Flash first, I think.
I heard they were overhauling Java 2E. Is that right?
What?
Someone, I remember hearing somewhere that they were thinking of overhauling Java 2E, doing much better vector support and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think is that going in Java 6?
Might be that.
Yeah. Okay, Feierabend. It's closing time now, and it's time for the pub. And thank you all for the discussion.
Yeah, check out Ethan Nicholas' blog. He's trying to strip down what we initially had as Java applets. So trying to see what is extraneous in there.
What was their name? Or Ethan?
Ethan Nicholas.
Ethan Nicholas.
He got a new job with Sun like 2 months ago or something like that. And what he's doing is he's got like code that is going in there and stripping stuff out of the core classes and then compiling them, then running them, and then seeing what is working and what's not working. And there was quite a bit of press on that like 2 months ago or so. So that might be something again for Java on the desktop or like applets coming back.
Yeah. Applets too. Okay. Right, thank you very much. I'm dying for my beer.